Hello, so my chapter is chapter 7, working with instructional and natural contexts. So it talks about, well, it starts off the chapter with a little boy trying to read a Hardy Boys book, and he comes across the word rendezvous. And first of all, he couldn't pronounce the word rendezvous because it is French, and he'd never seen that word before. And so he asks his mom, what is this word? And she tells him it means rendezvous, and she's like, well, what do you think it means? And he's like, I think it has to do with being hungry. And she says, no, it's talking about when you meet up with somebody, the French word. And he's like, well, how was I supposed to know that? So it's talking about that there are two different types of contexts when students learn how to use vocabulary. They include instructional and natural context. So instructional context they support because because it's hard for students to use context clues. Both types of context require students to use context clues, but the instructional context provides more support, so the teacher provides questions that kind of help the students figure out what the meaning of the word is. So, for example, the book provided an example of using the word eavesdrop, and so it provided the student a paragraph to figure out what the word eavesdrop is, and then ask questions like, what was this person up to? What told you that? What about it? What about this says that it was none of his business? So eavesdrop means what kind of listening. So it's providing prompts to help the student be able to figure out what the word eavesdrop means. Then it talks about naturally occurring context, which the book has said is very hard for students because it's hard to figure out what words mean that you've never seen before using context clues, and often sometimes the text doesn't provide you enough support to even figure out what those words mean to begin with. So it talks about doing activities like contrasting words or linking synonyms and antonyms to words. It also talks about activating the student's background knowledge. So figuring out words or having the students picture scenarios that they know. So one of the words that they used was the word scowl. And the teacher was asking questions like, okay, well, what do you do when you get mad? And the student said, well, I make a face, I yell, I punch I punch my fist up into a ball. So the teacher was able to help the student figure out what the word meant by having the student think about what they already know or what experiences they had. So that kind of helps them figure things out in more natural context. One of the strategies they talk about is read paraphrase, which also can help support students with both instructional or natural context. So it has the students establish the meaning of the context. So it could be something like what's happening in the sentences, and the student could say, well, so-and-so is mad about something, and he stamped out of the room and said, is there anything else? Well, he yelled at her and he went back to the door. So basically having the student try to think about what's going on in the scenario or the story. And then it says initial identification and rationale. So it says, what do you think the word scowl might mean? And she says, yelled. Why do you think it's yelled? Well, he's mad at her, and then he yelled because he wasn't coming back. So that's helping the student try to think of a rationale for the word or how the word might fit into the context. And if the student's still not getting it, that's where you can start activating that background knowledge. Well, what do you do when you get mad? So that's what's called consider further possibilities. So eventually the student got around to the word, and then if you needed to and your students still weren't getting it, you could do pictures or try some other strategies for them to brainstorm further possibilities. So you can do these strategies with either a whole class, or you could do it in small groups or independently. And another strategy they talk about is the robust academic vocabulary encounters. So it's talking about having the students embody the words in their vocabulary, so using those instructional strategies to kind of probe their thinking. And so it says provide initial support for the context for the word, questions to direct students' attention to the context, ideas to develop which indicate specific aspects of the context to highlight, a student-friendly definition of the word, questions to support students in integrating the context and definition, and then a second context for the word, and so the whole process repeats over again. So the example they had in here was the word expose. So it said, what does this context say about how coal is mined? Ideas to develop. Some coal is mined by digging deep underground, and some coal is mined by blasting off mountaintops. The student-friendly definition is, if you expose something, you let it show or make it known. How does the meaning of expose fit into context 1? Ideas to develop. When mountaintops are blasted off, the coal underneath can be seen. Follow-up is needed. What do you mean by that? What does that have to do with expose? And then it provides a second context for the word. So students can be exposed to the world of jazz music by attending jazz concerts, by listening to jazz CDs. A new CD called Second Set exposes students to jazz solos, backgrounds, bass lines, and parts of piano and percussion. So it provides another meaning for the word, and then it probes the students further, so the students can see there are multiple meanings for vocabulary words, but it can also start to help them think about how it relates to their lives and how that they might use it. So it has questions like, how might you expose someone who is mistreating his or her dog? Or how can middle school students be exposed to what it would be like in high school? So you're using the word over and over again and providing multiple meanings for the word, therefore they're more likely to learn it and remember it. And the kind of main overall point of the chapter is it's trying to show teachers that vocabulary is not just students learning a definition, it's about the process. So all these strategies have to do with the process of learning words. It's not just having the students look up the word, it's having them engage in figuring out the word. Because as we've seen, the more connections a student can make with the word and the more experiences they can have with the word, the more likely they're able to use it, remember it, and write using the word. Thank you.